just figure this out for a second. Okay, cool, it works. Okay, like it's been said, I'm Bara Mankies. I'm new title, systems engineer for Middle East and Africa. And so I work predominantly in the IP or WDM space for a company called Adtran. So, quick poll. Who knows this picture? I think most people in this room have networks that look like this, right? Got a bunch of routers in a metro environment running 1310 nanometer or grey optics, typically LR4 up to 40 kilometers. Just a quick poll. Who's got fiber? Or who's got fiber distributed like this and access networks like this? Hands. Yeah, how many of you are running this on WDM? Few. Okay, so 1 or 2 hands. Cool. So the idea is Mark has now talked about coherent optics and what it is, where it's going. I'm just trying to say or create a picture of why it's a need and why you, like regional service providers or small ISPs, need to start looking at this. So current environments, if you're looking at it, it's routers connected to point-to-point, or typically DCI or multi-environments. So one of the benefits are logical design is quite simple. I mean, it's either all done at layer 2 routing or VLANs or MPLS networks and so forth. You've got no Lambda inventory to require, so it's straight and simple. Got either a 10 gig interface or 100 gig interface between 2 routers, and all your traffic is dimension and capacity across it, right? So what's currently happening in the picture we are seeing is you guys as regional service providers or ISPs are starting to get more requirements on the areas that you service. So typically you started as an enterprise or business ISP, servicing some of these guys, and then that capacity is now starting to grow. You've got some gated communities or business parks coming up, running fiber to the business, or you've got some guys like Comsol that want to buy some tower capacity from you on your fiber, and now suddenly they have to route through your routers. You can't segregate the traffic unless it's on a VLAN or MPLS layer or something like that. So networks are starting to see like broadband access, fiber to the curb, fiber to the home, whatever. These are typically looking towards 10 gig, 100 gig, 50 gig type capacity now on the uplinks. Your business service is currently 10, 40 gig type of services, but these are going to drastically expand soon. And then you've got your mobile service providers, especially the guys rolling out 5G, that are looking at like 25G a sector and upwards, right? So the where this demand is starting to come from, this is a very European American view of it, but I think South Africa is not too far from this. Is you're starting to see house users expecting higher capacity in home. So if you're looking at fiber to the home, guys are rolling out 10 gig PON at the moment, where it used to be EPON or 1 GPON. These are now becoming 10 gig PON, and the guys are already talking about 50 GPON. So the home user is now starting to look at augmented reality type of capacity. It's growing. IoT smart homes are becoming a thing, especially in communities. And then businesses are starting to look at AI-assisted applications, right? So the trend we are seeing happening is, if you look at this graph quickly, all your inference engines, there's a trend where the enterprises are starting to take the inference engines on-prem, so having it in a hybrid type of scenario, where the inference engine sits in the premises, and then the learning engines sit in the clouds because of the compute cost. So you've got your guys like AWS, Azure, Oracle, that's going to drive the learning capacity because you're not consistently needing it. So now the businesses need DCI data center interconnect from their premises up until a Terraco or an Engs or wherever, and they need to increase this capacity. So suddenly these AI applications are starting to drive 100 gig type of capacity for those guys. So this traffic is, in your case, has to be generated somewhere and effectively routed through your network without complicating your layer 3 or layer 2. So that's where the little song comes from, OEOEO. And it's really not a song, it's just a little acronym. The guys in the optical space would know about it. Electrical, optical, electrical, regeneration. So typically, in the case of the RSP space or ISP space, this is a pretty simple picture. Got your little Aussie model there up to layer 3. So every time you do any traffic, you drop up to your router, you go into your fiber, and then the next stop, you're taking it back to layer 2 or layer 3, where you're now making a routing decision with it. And this is adding latency, right? And it's like 50 milliseconds to 3 milliseconds upwards, depending on the capacity sizing. So now as you go through your networks, some are 3 ops, some are 10 ops, some are multi-meshed. So now latency starts becoming a problem. So even in optical networks, we see customers doing OTN switching. So they take a transponder or a muxponder or OTN cross-connect device. They take the optical capacity, route it to OTN layer, which is layer 1, layer 1, and then routing it back again. But this is also still adding some capacity or latency, right? So Mark has now spoken about QSFPs and those interfaces. So one of the technology trends fueling IP over WDM is coherent transceivers are no longer big and clunky. So typically in the, 2 years ago, coherent transceivers were still CFPs, very big CFP cages onto a router. If you've ever bought a Juniper with a CFP cage, you would know what cost is. It's not a cheap exercise. So coherent transceivers have now driven down cost points and also electricity. I mean, a CFP compared to a QSFP 28, it's 6 watt power factor. I think, it's 6 watts. So that has now driven down the cost. A CFP compared to a QSFP double density 400 gig interface is probably $4,000 compared to a CFP which is more close to $12,000. So that cost point has now come down significantly. Router cost and hardware cost continues to grow. I think that's just par for the course. If you're an operator, routers don't get cheaper, they just get more expensive. And then the other driver is packet switching. The chipsets on packet switching have advanced much more than you would have seen with optical or OTN, TDM type of transponders. And so these things are now driving less complex, easier WDM networks, which guys don't have to be scared of. Because in the past, how many people in this room have heard WDM and got scared about it? It was like, oh shit, I'm not a transmission engineer. But I know IP and I know how to route the IP address in a subnet mask, but routing light is weird. It's actually the simplest thing you can do. FYI. You IP guys complicate things. So this is now driving it. So IP over WDM benefits. So I'm going to start with the benefits and we'll talk about architecture now. Your cost footprint and power consumption significantly drops. So you've got less layers to go through, so you don't have such a high requirement for switching capacity every time you add new services and you start going over your backplane capacity on your routers. Optical kit, typically, if you're running unamplified networks, access networks and stuff, it's inert and passive, so there's no power requirement. If your architecture is simplifying, and we'll get to that in a moment. Management and interop, like Mark said, there are management and interop groups called OIF that are driving this kind of stuff. So guys like Juniper, Cisco, Ciena, Atra, and all these guys are working together to make this simpler and to not make it scary for you IP guys. Management-wise, it's a con. End-to-end management becomes a bit weird. You don't have a typical control plane fashion where your router and optical network are managed in the same interface. You're now starting to look at SDN type of networks, and we know that management becomes pricey and complicated, right? You have to have some skill there. Operations, you have a bit of optical planning. That one is not there to scare you guys. It's just, listen, optical is not as simple as plug and play. There is some thought to it. And then responsibility for troubleshooting and RMAs becomes a bit of a thing, right? When I've got an optical interface and I've got an optical line system, and it's 3 different vendors, including my router vendor, and there's a fault, where do I draw the line? Where's the demarcation point for what? So it's a bit of a con because it takes a while to figure out. So your first few faults are going to be hair-raising, and customers are going to be screaming, but you'll sort it out eventually. I think that's key, right? So network architectures, we're looking at simplifying network architectures here. So don't be too scared about the pictures. So typically what we see guys doing if they start going to the IP over WDM space is the bottom picture, where it's like cascaded point-to-point optical line systems. So what they've done is they've taken the fiber, they run it to their routers, and in this case, let's say this operator has done 3 times 100 gig or 3 times 400 gig onto his routers. So everything's still hitting there, but his capacity growth is quicker because he doesn't need to go buy new fiber every time he needs to add another 100 gig or a 10 gig service. He's just using the same fiber he already has in. He just puts one of these colored coherent optics onto the router and light that lambda or that frequency, and then bob's your uncle, right? So your fiber infrastructure investment that you've got with whoever your fiber provider is stays the same. You're just putting a small capex cost on top of that to utilize the fiber to its full capacity. So typically, if you're running coherent networks, you can go anything from 800 gigs up to 20 terabits on a single piece of fiber, which I think is quite a good investment, where if you've got a piece of dark fiber with a 100 gig interface on it, 100 gigs what you're doing on that. So WDM gives you this capacity and expansion capability that you didn't have on a single fiber pair investment. So one of the things, and when it comes to optical regeneration, is we're starting to look at the upper picture, which is the optical with OLS with optical bypass. So typically what's happening is in any environment where, for argument's sake, you've got a bunch of business services on a chained access ring, and you're running your routers, that stays as it is, but for argument's sake now you bring on a new fiber to the home client or guided community or an enterprise client with 100 gig capacity requirement or upwards. What you then do is that guy, you're not going to route through your other enterprises because it's not needed. You take whatever traffic you pick up from him and you route it straight to your metro aggregation point. So in many cases, the Terracos or wherever you land. So start simplifying your routing environment, and it physically segments the networks. So now you don't have to do VLAN or MPLS segmentation. You segment it with physical light. So for argument's sake, your normal enterprise services, the guys running 10G type services and so forth, they're on the piece of red light, and then your big enterprise bank customer is that little blue wavelength there running through that node. So it's not touching your IP routed business services, you're just routing them straight past that node into wherever you're terminating that, and the same for green. So now what's happening is you're physically segmenting the traffic, you're removing a layer of latency, you're removing a layer of complexity, and you're directly routing traffic where it needs to go immediately. And I think that's a key driver here. I mean, low latency networks, high capacity is what we're all aiming for at a reduced cost. So talking about cost and CapEx, so your initial 100 gig CapEx on a point-to-point network is the same, obviously, as it would be on a WDM bypass. But when you start getting to your third 400G service, you see a significant taper where your point-to-point CapEx keeps on going up, trending upwards. Your optical bypass slightly trends up, because that's typically just a transponder cost or a QSFP 28 or QSFP double density interface, which you're now putting onto a SAN switch, a Juniper router, or whatever you're using. Even most OLTs these days, if you're doing fiber to the curb, on their uplinks, you can do coherent interfaces to directly route to your aggregation points rather than routing into an ag router and then through the network. So now it creates this cost benefit as you start growing. The reason I'm saying this is I think most of you guys in this room are now in that awkward stage where 10G, 40G is not cutting it anymore. You have to start looking at 100 gig backbones, right? Think how many of you guys are now considering upgrading your routers to 100 gig interfaces? Hands. There's one at least. I'm preaching to one guy today. So now's a good time to start looking at IP over WDM while you're in that router upgrade phase, because you can now introduce these interfaces on top of it. So if you look at your typical coherent QSFP interface, it can run anything from 80 kilometers unamplified up to 120 kilometers unamplified. So, and it's in the same cost space as your LR4 interface or ER4 interface would be. So now suddenly you've got a plug that is longer distance and it gives you growth capacity, right? And that then is like, how do we get to this, preparing our networks to start going IP over WDM, even if the need is not there yet. So typically what you would see is, if you look at the low capacity portion, for the guys that are upgrading and looking at getting more out of your fiber, you'll see you've got, in this case, a 6-node ring. You've got your fiber in there and your routers are talking to each other. So now what you do is those 100 gig interfaces, instead of buying a 1310 LR or ER interface, you now buy a coherent interface and you plug it on there and you add filters if you need, or the filters can come later. And now what you've done is you've immediately taken the first step to going WDM in the future when your capacity starts growing. So as your network starts growing to like moderate capacity and you start to do node bypassing, your fiber infrastructure still looks exactly the same. But now for argument's sake, I've got a routing requirement from node 1 to node 2, but it needs to be physically. So now node 1 and node 2 to node 5, we just light up lambdas. So we just light up coherent interfaces on those wavelengths and we route past all the other nodes. We don't touch the electrical layer or the layer 2 or layer 3 at all, and we terminate directly on the nodes. My fiber infrastructure has stayed the same. I've only added a WDM layer to it. In most metros, this can happen without amplification, depending on your fiber provider, but let's not go there today. And now you've taken the step, and you can also now start selling services to multi-services type of vendors. So you've got fiber probably where someone else doesn't, but they don't necessarily want to terminate on your layer 2 or layer 3. So now you can sell wavelengths to them and monetize your fiber without having to run your own traffic on it. So now your fiber is making money without it having to be just your traffic. And then as this thing grows to more complex, medium and high capacity networks, your physical routing, your fiber routing still looks the same. Your nodes are still in the same order, but now physically we are routing via optical light. We are routing interfaces to a complete mesh without having to go to the electrical layer at each of these nodes. So now your networks are growing. It looks a bit complicated if you logically draw it, but when it comes to light, you're building a pipe, right? It's a bit pipe. So this is much more simpler than doing VLAN and MPLS and those things, and it's quicker and cheaper to do, if you look at it. And so that's typically the drivers towards these things, and this is the architecture. So there's a starting point, and it's a low starting point, where you then can go up to more complex networks as your capacity starts increasing. Improving optical or improving network resiliency is a good benefit of WDM. So typically WDM networks, you can route further distances because of the DSPs on the interfaces of those plugs. Also, fiber loss is easier to absorb. I wouldn't say it's infinitely unabsorbable, but you can start adding amplifiers to areas where you've got very high fiber attenuation. So in cases where you bought a fiber, where you had a 40-kilometer plug on it, and it's now degraded so far that you need an 80-kilometer plug on it, the distance is the same, but the optical power is now just more. You can just add amplifiers. I mean, we always joke with the car guys, just turn boost, and there we go. but it's not that simple. but your fiber loss resilience on WDM is easier to absorb than it is with your normal grey interfaces with having to replace plugs. Optical protection is simpler, so at an optical protection layer, if you do some things like optical path protection or OTN path protection, you're looking at sub 50 millisecond switching times. So I mean, if you look at an MPLS protected layer, there's no way you're switching traffic in a failure event within sub 50 milliseconds. So optical then resiliency and switching times when it comes to fiber breaks or service drops is just faster. Talking about the openness of it, so just to have a picture, so the OIF you realize or recognize from Mark's picture. So in the OIF space, this is a test we did at the OFC 2025 interoperability demonstration. So I don't think it's very clear, but you'll see there's multiple vendors in there. There's Juniper, MX's, there is Cisco optical line systems, there is Adtran optical line systems, there's Infinera optical line systems, Cisco routers, you name it. These plugs work over multiple WDM systems within multiple routing vendors and so forth. So the community is growing globally, and it's what do you call it, standards driven to start looking at making this simpler. Transmission is not that hard. It's really, like I said, we build pipes. I think Nick and Melania know that you build pipes, right? You want 100 gig, I'll build you 100 gig. You want 300 gig, I'll build you 300 gig. You fill it with whatever is in there. We don't care. We don't look at the traffic. We just take it. We pass it along seamlessly. Bob's your uncle. So the community is now starting to come together. Routers are terminating to whatever optical line system. The plugs are from vendor A, B, C to all the way to Z and Y. Optical line systems are, you get active optical line systems with ROADMs, or you get passive systems. So depending on the complexity that you want to go, you can start upgrading your networks and go that path. So I think I'm a bit quicker today, but I think that's also not a bad thing. No one wants to listen to me. So just to get to conclusion, your cost footprint, like I already said, and power consumption drops. Your transponder, so you've got no transponder platform, you've got an easier routing environment because of the WDM. Your architecture is significantly easier to do at a maybe not a physical layer, but at a logical layer, your architecture is simplified. And then management and interop is being driven by the OIF and anyone like that. And there I will leave you. Any questions? Yeah. I think you need to run to a mic. I think there's one here.
Hi there, I'm Hein from NTT Data. Just a question with your topology. If you can just go back, I think it's 3 slides maybe? Yes, there. So between router 1, 2, and 5, if you said you can just hop through magically to the other side, how does that work without going optical, electrical, optical, if it just
So what happens is, at these routers, so you'll see at the bottom picture, that's your physical fiber infrastructure. The little icons there are WDM filters or router modules, whatever you want to call them. So these are muxes, but it's like a physical frequency mux. So each one of these interfaces or those ports are set to a specific frequency. So you add these muxes into your nodes, and like I said, they could be completely passive. In some cases, they can be electric powered. And then these live on all your nodes where your routers live. So what you would do is, initially when you build your traffic in picture 1, you will light a specific lambda or frequency between those nodes. Then when you get to the second phase of it and you've got router 5, 1, and 2 needing to talk to each other directly, what you do is you take a 100 gig interface, you put it into your router, a new 100 gig interface set to a different frequency. That frequency is then bypassed on all your other nodes except the node it needs to terminate on. And it terminates there. So So physically it runs the same path, but it doesn't go optical electrical every time. It just runs along the same path, but optically. And then you terminate that frequency at those specific nodes that you require it.
Okay.
So
So there's something in between your
yeah, it could be a WDM filter, a small mux, it could be a passive splitter module or a power splitter module, or a ROADM device, which is an active, it's an optical router, you can call it.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Hi, Ronald from Nepean. My question is on IP over optical. What's the maximum frame size that you can use?
No, we don't. So the MTU is not limited by the optical space. The MTU is limited by the router. So whatever the frame the router hits, we don't care. The optical space doesn't care about frame sizes. We just care about light. So the frame size limitation is on the router itself. So whatever that MTU frame set is on the router, that's your limitation. So on the router side, there's a limitation. If you're using a transponder, there's also still no frame size limitation. I mean, I think for monitoring purposes, if you monitor an interface, there's a frame size limitation. But if you're just getting traffic, whatever we get, we pass along as bits. So we don't even go to the optical layer. We get a 100 gig Ethernet signal for argument's sake. We pack that into an OTU4 frame, which is at layer 1, and we just pack bits and pop it along, pack bits and pop it along. So we're not bugged about the frame. Does that answer it? You look skeptical.
No, I was just thinking with video caches, it would be perfect if you could have extremely large frames that were being backfilled by optical without Ethernet being involved.
Yeah. So that's in those cases. There are transponders built specifically for video frame type of stuff. So in 2010, with the Soccer World Cup, the guys used transponders that were built specifically to run video frame sets between the stadiums and SABC.
Morning, guys. Azut, name is FK from Terracon, Johannesburg. Thank you for having us in Durban, first time here. I'm in sales, so very not technical, so try and be easy on me. First question is for Mark, and then the second one is for you, Byron. Mark, you mentioned with the coherent technology, do you ever get instances where the waves actually are equal and opposite to each other, creating, in sound engineering they call it phase shift, where the waves cancel each other out? And does that DSP device actually mitigate and prevent that on some level?
Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah, that would be what is called nonlinear impairment. So cross-phase or four-wave mixing or cross-phase mixing. But then yes, the DSP can compensate for that on the receiver side.
All right, excellent. And then to Byron, it means if network operators who currently have a fiber network, say, like Mark said, even from 1982, if you're really desperate to get that, it means that they can actually maximize and utilize and optimize even their existing fiber networks where they would have needed to upgrade at some point or revamp their networks. It means utilizing now the coherent devices. They can actually use up a lot more of that wavelength and a lot more of the light spectrum and prolonging maximizing on that ROI. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's 100% correct, right? So if you look at it, the way that networks are currently built in the access or metro space, because it's gray interfaces, it's single wavelength, right? So it's a 1310 nanometer interface, and it's a single wavelength. So you either run 10 gig, 40 gig, or 100 gig on it, and that's now the capacity of it. The second you start going to WDM, you can upgrade up until 20 terabits in many cases, depending on the fiber quality.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Like I said, not technical.
Anyone else? Cool. Thank you very much.